Are we all okay? Yeah? All happy? Good. Right. When I first came forward in 2013 to make my video statements, I was told by police, okay, we'll send somebody round to your house and we'll speak to you, we'll get your statement of fact off you. And I was reporting events that had happened in both Skirfoot Lodge in Halifax and Bryn community in North Wales. They sent me an officer called Bryn Taylor, who insisted that I call him Bryn. Not B.I. Taylor, not Officer Taylor, not even Mr. Taylor, but Bryn. So every time I rang the police, I had to ask for Bryn to speak about Bryn Allen and the abuse I'd suffered. He told me that despite my mental health problems, I couldn't have support in my interview. I couldn't have an intermediary because it wasn't a spectator sport. What? What kind of comment is that to make to anyone that needs some support during their interview, has asked for that help? No, it's not a spectator sport. You're not a suspect, you're a witness. I'm sorry, no. I'm a survivor. I'm the victim. Not a witness. I didn't watch it happen to somebody else, it happened to me. I suffered those injuries, not somebody else. And because they didn't want undue influence on my statement. Well, how would there be any undue influence? I was asking for an intermediary, which is a completely independent third party, somebody you've never met. You can't spend, the rules are you cannot be left alone with them. So you cannot divulge any information about anything to them. They're just there to purely call a break if you see getting stressed. And they were saying, no, I can't have one because it would cause undue influence in my interview. Eventually, they backed down and they gave me the intermediary. It took about 3 months of fighting to get that. I went to meet with the intermediary because you have to meet with them before you give your video statement. And went in, and because I had complained so much about Bryn Taylor, they replaced him on the investigation with another male officer. It's funny I was left the building because I believe that DCI Chris Gibson was actually that officer. And he walked in 15 minutes late into this meeting with the intermediary, dumped himself on the couch, legs splayed, arms on his legs. Right, what's your problem now? What are you moaning at now? We're going to do it this way, this is how it's going to be done. And you'll be here on Friday for it. Okay. Really not feeling confident about this one now. Thank you. And I was left on the Friday to make my own way to the police station and then make my own way back home 5.5 hours later. I had no contact from that point with the police to tell me how anything was going or what they were doing. 3 months later, I had to ring them and chase them for them to tell me, oh, yeah, we're not going to do anything. It's all been no further action. We've sent you bits from North Wales off to Operation Palio, but any abuse from Skirfoot Lodge, not going to look at. The rape in Farfield 193 Huddersfield Road, we're not going to look at. Sorry. And I put the phone down. No offer of counselling, no support, and I had to chase them to actually get a response out of them as to what they were going to do, which was nothing. So, August last year, I had protest outside Northgate House, a very soggy protest, as some of you will remember. And following that, we managed to get a meeting with the Director of Social Services, and that wasn't the couple that turned up to the meeting, was it?
I don't think
No,
so, no.
no, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But one officer was there, and they insisted point blank that no investigation in Halifax would be reopened. I'm sorry, Phillips, the head of Stoke at Large, he was trafficking children to other areas around the UK. Seemingly to order. We had Rod Ryle, the Director of Social Services, convicted in '88, who worked closely with Peter Wrighton, paedophile information exchange, head of Social Services, advisor to the government, blah, blah, blah. Worked very closely with him in Birmingham before he moved himself, Phillips and Andrew Shoulders up here. Rod Ryle also put into place over at Close Lane in Raspberry, at the top end of Calder Valley, George Lincoln, who later went off to be convicted with Frank Beck in Leicester. David Anderson, the head of Closely at the time, well, he was the only head of Closely, he had gone into hospital for an operation, and whilst he was laid up, they needed a deputy head. Rod Ryle and Rod Shields of Social Services had both gone to the hospital and said, look, we need somebody in. We need you to shortlist these names, and we've already done some of them for you. To make it easy for you, because we know you're medicated up, this, that and the other, you know. Just bang a few names on the shortlist, we'll get them interviewed and we'll sort something from it. Next thing he does is just got out of hospital and back home, and there's members of staff knocking on the door. You've got to come back. He's taking kids home at the weekend. And he was taking boys home for the weekend. So David Anderson, he gets himself out of his sick bed and he goes back to Closely and he serves George Lincoln out. Next thing we know, he's working down Leicester with Frank Beck. Yet another paedophile information exchange connection. In Crag Vale, you've got St John's Church, where Jimmy Savile was the Honourable Warden. You've got Reverend David Bennett, who started out up here, who then moved on to Nottingham, and is a known offender.
Savile connections.
Yeah. It's all this web of connections. Savile visited Hebden Bridge, Mythen Wood, how many times over the last few decades until he died? He was a regular visitor. He had a caravan in Crag Vale, for Christ's sake, that he used regularly. He was in Calder Valley High School with the kids regularly. He did songs of praise from here. You know? Made him look like a saint. People in the villages welcomed him. They liked having a celebrity in their midst. More like wolf amongst the flock. And we need it all looked at. It has come out over the last few months that Jimmy Savile was a member of the Paedophile Information Exchange. Yet another high connection. In 1983, just over in Huddersfield, Beat Meyer, a member of the Mark de Croo gang from Belgium, he was convicted for crimes against a young boy under 10. Beat Meyer was also Pike and Spartacus, which is a counterpart paedophile group abroad. He had to have connections in the area to come to actually get access to that boy. His connections between Huddersfield Huddersfield and here, the only ones I can find is Rod Ryle. Rod Ryle has a lot to answer for in this area, in this valley.
Yeah, it does.
He ran it for over a decade. And in that time, it became full of abuse. And that abuse is still rampant today. The police, despite what they say, do little to investigate, to help uncover it. Simply by putting off survivors with things like, it's not spectator spot. Oh yeah, well then why do the paparazzi line up outside the courts every day then, if it's not a spectator spot? The court process makes it a spectator spot. Essentially, everything that is done in the public eye is a spectator spot. The only part of it that wasn't was when he took me behind closed doors and raped me. That was the bit that wasn't. Now, they've forced me to the point where I feel it has to be a spectator sport. And I'll play their game. I better win.